Everybody loves to jump to a conclusion. That's a big theme of our show today. Is everybody wants to jump to conclusion. Once you've proven you can do something, especially in sports, fans love to push you even higher than you're really meant for yet. I'm going to do that in a little bit with our second segment, but that's, again, the fan in me. So, I think we can see signs whether we want to acknowledge them or not. The Chiefs are winning, and I've been very public on my Chief hate and how I've thought this team was not as good as the past two teams that won a Super Bowl. And for them, with their standard being win a ring or the season is not successful, that's fine. But I'm starting to notice more and more, everybody talks about the Chiefs from a positive point of view, except one guy. The one guy who's not really talking positively about the Chiefs is the Chiefs quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. And I was thinking about this. I saw the clip yesterday, and he says, you know what? I would really like some of these games to be blowouts. When your own quarterback, the best player in franchise history, the reason you guys are at this new elevated status in the pecking order of the NFL, comes out and says, man, I really wish we could blow out some teams. And that got me to thinking. There's been several of these comments made throughout the season. Several times Mahomes has said, frustrated with how the offense is playing, frustrated at how the way some of these games are going. He's the only one that seems to be annoyed, ticked off, irritated, whatever word you want to use to describe his frustrations with his own football team and their performance. And then there was a soundbite from the locker room yesterday about Andy Reid. He walked in there, and he kind of looked around, and he saw a couple of his key players. Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, McDuffie, Mahomes. These guys who have been all pros. In Kelce's argument, maybe the best at his position, potentially best at his position ever. Chris Jones was basically got the title once Aaron Donald retired. That's the best defensive tackle in the league. McDuffie's been an all-pro. He's looking at him, he's going, look, guys, winning is hard in the National Football League. So, you guys, you could think what you want, say what you want, but to get it done is getting it done. Like, he's doing this speech because he can look around and see my guys aren't feeling it. Yeah, we just came out of another close game with the Panthers. We had a game last week where we lost. We had a game 2 weeks ago where if they don't block the kick, we could have lost 2 out of 3. And again, you're in a game-winning field goal situation against the Carolina Panthers. Everybody beats the Panthers. Go look at all the rookie QBs from this class. Look at their best games. Most of them are against the Panthers. And Mahomes is sitting there and he's frustrated. Some of these comments are coming out, but the media has been very hands-off because the media was wrong last year about the Chiefs, and they don't want to be wrong again this year because the big media networks would rather play it safe than say, hey, you know what? There is something wrong with this Chiefs team. There is something wrong with this offense. The 35-year-old tight end is not who he's been the last several years, and he's just not going to magically flip the switch and be that again. Their dominant defensive tackle, the best player to some people's opinion on defense in the sport. He's not who he's been. He just had a 0 tackle, 0 sack game against the Panthers. Like, these things are adding up, and these teams are starting to realize, there is some self-doubt that creeps into that. And if you're Mahomes, this is what we credit every quarterback with, but the true all-time greats, not just quarterbacks, but the true all-time greats at any position. One of the biggest things you can do to put a feather in your cap to say, I am one of the greatest to ever do this, the Mount Rushmore kind of guys, is say, I elevated lesser talent, and I got us to where we needed to go. LeBron in 07. A lot of people would tell you, if you really broke it down, him getting to that finals is potentially at the end of his career with all of his achievements is going to be the greatest one because we saw the roster that he had. Brady took another step. Even though he had the record-setting season 07, he took another step when he got into that phase of his career where he was taking Wes Welker, who was essentially a nobody before him, Julian Edelman, these slot receivers, Danny Amendola, like these guys who did not have roles on other teams, they were suddenly going to New England and having career years, resetting their careers. Welker went on for receptions part, like a historic run of receptions when he got with Brady. And that's when we elevated Brady to an even higher standard. He already had an MVP. He already had Super Bowls. And we said, you know what? He's even better than we thought. And Mahomes, that's what he has to do currently. And what I think he's really, and he had to do this last year. Let me not misconstrue what I'm about to say. He had to do this last year. But to do this again and again and again. LeBron was doing it in Cleveland again and again, getting to NBA Finals, Eastern Conference Finals against the Big Three Celtics, playing the Pistons towards the end of their run, playing Orlando with prime Dwight Howard. And finally, he was like, you know what? This is tiring. I'm not being able to maximize the most of my ability. Left to Miami. Not saying Mahomes is asking for a trade, obviously. I'm just telling you what LeBron did. Brady, eventually, after years and years and years of doing that, maximizing, getting the most out of these slot receivers, guys who would not be ones and twos on other teams. Now, he did it for much longer. He did it for 20 years. But eventually, even he said, you know what? I'm over it. Time to move on. Goes on to Tampa. Mahomes is the one guy, everybody in the media, everyone trying to be a darling. Oh, the Chiefs are okay. Oh, the Chiefs are okay. They'll figure it out because we saw them struggle like this last year. We saw them struggle, but we never once saw Mahomes. Even when they led the NFL in drops, Mahomes was never throwing guys under the bus. This year, he's frustrated. The comments are coming out. They're playing close games with the Carolina Panthers. Everybody can say what they want. Everyone can tell you, oh, Mahomes is he's going to be fine. The Chiefs are going to be fine. I don't even think at this point Mahomes thinks that's the reality. I think he believes in his heart of heart he's great enough that if he were to just get a chance in the playoffs, he'll take his chance against anybody's. But he realizes the level of difficulty that's going to take this specific year. Yes, it's supposed to be harder because it's a three-peat. Welcome to wanting to be great. Yes, it's supposed to be harder because you're the defending Super Bowl champions. Everyone's going to get your best shot. Welcome to being great. And so if we're going to put Mahomes on this, everybody's already put him in the GOAT conversation. That's what GOATs do. Brady delivered without an A1 wide receiver. 4 more Super Bowls on the back end of his career. I'll say 3. When he went to Tampa, he had Mike Evans. But we'll give those last 3 in New England definitively without an A1 wide receiver. LeBron has continued to be great even post that Cleveland run and post that Miami run. Hell, he's in year 22, and there's nights he's the best player on the court. Both teams. This is what the all-time greats, the GOATs, really do. And if you want to elevate Mahomes to that status already, fine. But then give him some of the expectations that come along with it. And again, say what you want to being a hater. And I am self-acknowledged. But the reality is, I didn't see these same comments. I'm just using my eyes, guys. I'm just using my eyes, using my ears. Mahomes was not making these same comments last year. He was not throwing guys under the bus. And you can tell when it's really frustrating him because he just lets it go. He's an emotional player. This is one of those things, I said this when I was complaining about the refs. Mahomes, I didn't give Mahomes and the Chiefs this immune air to the refs because it's like, oh, well, the refs just missed calls. In that Buffalo game last year when the refs missed a call and Mahomes felt like the refs missed a call because they called something that's not very common, which is the backward pass. Was the backward pass play, Kelsey to the Kansas City receiver, and they called it back for illegal motion, and Mahomes was just livid the entire time. Oh, this is bullshit, horse shit call, et cetera, when if it was the opposite and Josh Allen was doing that, we'd all say Josh Allen needs to hold his composure. Josh Allen needs to do this. If that same game had taken place and Lamar was there, they'd say Lamar's complaining about the refs. We just got to hold everyone to the same standard, and not even to the same standard, but the standard of where you qualify. And if we're going to push Mahomes up into this GOAT-esque class of quarterbacks already, then let's give him the standard of what these GOAT-esque quarterbacks also did. So, again, you can call me the Chiefs hater, but the reality is Mahomes is the one that looks frustrated with these games. Mahomes is the one making public comments. He's the one going post-game saying, hey, I'm frustrated because we're in close games with the Carolina Panthers, and I don't think that's where we should be. And I agree with him. But I say it, I'm a hater. He says it's just competitive nature. It's just this, like, he's not bullshitting us. He has had these emotional outbursts before, and he's one to just kind of let us know how he's feeling. So let's just actually do the wild thing and believe him. This Chiefs team, as currently constructed, as they are currently playing, is not a championship level team. Are they still one of the best teams in the NFL? Yes. Are they still one of the best coach teams in the NFL? Yes. Is Mahomes at any given point in time still the best quarterback on the field? Yes. But he's like, there's two things that happen to you as a quarterback. And then we're going to get out of here. There's two things that happen to you as a quarterback. A, you're going through what Joe Burrow is currently experiencing, which is Joe Burrow is playing as well as anybody in the NFL, but it does not matter because his defense is so awful that every quarterback they play essentially turns into Joe Burrow. And you get nullified. We don't care if you throw 4 or 5 touchdowns because the defense is giving up 4 or 5 touchdowns and they're making everybody elevated up to your status. Or you have great quarterbacks who have no help around them as far as offensively. This was Brady towards the end of his time in New England. This was, you could argue, Mahomes last year, but I would also argue Kelsey was a bit better last year. And Mahomes is currently dealing with the secret third phase of that, which is we've had success. We've been a clear great team in this league, potential Super Bowl champion, and everybody else is getting worse. And I'm the only one, because quarterbacks can play longer naturally than almost every other position. I'm the only one who's still in his prime, close to his prime, peak of his powers, whatever word you want to use. And he is watching everyone around him decline. He is watching everyone around him be Chris Jones, be a half a step slower, which means instead of being 4 to 5 quarterback pressures a game and a dominant defensive tackle, he's now 1 to 2 pressures a game, and he's just a good defensive tackle. He's watching Travis Kelce, who, unless the game plan is solely focused on him, Kelce was the guy who could get you 7-8 catches in any game. Now Kelce's the guy who can only get you 7-8 catches 4 or 5 times throughout the season. He's watching his defense. Look at the last 2 weeks of the Kansas City defense. All this stuff, you can see a linear progression from where they were to where they're going. And yes, they're still currently in great because we watched them come from an all-time offense to putting on an all-time defensive run, and they're just slowly, steadily decreasing. And he's the only guy who's keeping his status. Now, I know the stats don't say it and the play doesn't say it exactly, but he's the only guy, because he can play 15, 20 years, he's the only guy still in his prime. He's the only guy who still is in the peak of his athletic powers where he can turn this around. And he's looking around saying, I'm the only one. I'm not going to be able to get this done by myself the same way we did it last year because everything else is slowly decreasing. Even his head coach, who's one of the most clever play callers in the NFL. Is Andy Reid just saving plays, or is plays just not as good? So, again, you can call me a Chiefs hater. That's fine. I'll take the label. I'm okay with that. But there's a guy playing quarterback for him who's also venting frustration, who's also concerned that they're in these kind of games. He's not just telling you what the basic media is, which is, oh, well, they're just practicing, or, oh, well, they're the defending champs. You can't doubt them. Why? Yes, they have the most amount of wiggle room because of the defending champs, because of the current dynasty, 1,000%. But their own quarterback, a guy on their own team, their head coach is telling everybody, keep your heads up in the locker room. You beat the Carolina Panthers. Be excited. What if, and just ask yourself, if that was another coach, what would you look at it as? If that was another team, what would you view that as? We would look at them the way we looked at the Eagles last year when they went on their downfall. We would look at them the way we looked at the Steelers that last year, or second to last year with Big Ben, where they were 11-0. We would not view them as a serious title contender, and we would not view them as one of the best teams in the NFL. We would say that their wins, this is the one, I'm not a big advanced metric guy. I'm more of just watch the game, see what you can see. But some of these teams, when you get to 10, 11-0, 10-1, 11-1, these really gaudy records, and your plus minus, or your margin of victory, is really small. And again, we've seen the iffy calls. We've seen the play here, play there. And yes, you're making them right now. But just making a play here, just making a play there, that's not how you became a dynasty. You became a dynasty because you were hands down the best team, whether it was the best offense or you transitioned into more of this dominant defense. But Chris Jones isn't the guy that he was. And I know that sounds sacrilegious because he's Chris Jones. He's one of the best players. He's one of the best defensive players, the best defensive player on a dynastic team. But when it's gone, we don't immediately know it. Travis Kelce went from Last year was his worst year ever, and he still almost got to 1,000 yards, but he decided to sit week 17. This year, he's not even remotely close to the same player. And it's more obvious with him because we could see receptions, we could see stats, we could see these easy things. Those same rules apply to Chris Jones. Those same rules apply to McDuffie. Look at McDuffie just a few weeks ago. We're going to bring Tony on here in a little bit. Look, Bo Nix cooked McDuffie. And a lot of you don't think Bo Nix is worth a shit. I think you're wrong, but a lot of you don't think Bo Nix is good at all. And Bo Nix was targeting McDuffie. This defense has gone back to back to back weeks, the worst they've looked since the Eagles Super Bowl. I don't know, man. I just, Patrick and I have the same birthday, so maybe that's why we think the same. And, I'm not frustrated the Chiefs are coming back down to earth. It's the reality of the NFL. It's the reality of dynasties. You appreciate them while they're here, but they don't last as long as we think. It's the nature of the sport. No one is ever truly going to have some 9-10 year run where they just obliterate everyone. Even the Patriots dynasty, which we basically give them 20 years, go look at that middle 10. They're 0-2 in Super Bowls. Yes, they still dominate their division. They're still clearly one of the best teams, but they're not winning Super Bowl year after year after year. Brady went 10 years in between winning Super Bowls. And that's the greatest player we've ever seen. And just because we elevated Mahomes to that same conversation, did we elevate him past him and I just didn't realize it? Stuff happens, man.